Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode 12 of season 3 of Black Writers Read. My name is Nicole Young Martin, and I serve as the producer and host for the series. I am coming to you from my kitchen. Moment of huge vulnerability. As many of you know, I have lots of things that breathe that live in my home, and many of them are near my office. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go someplace where it's kind of quieter. So you're going to see all kinds of stuff. As you know, I don't care. So it's more important to be together today. So let's go ahead and get started. Black Writers Read showcases, celebrates, and honors the words, work, and traditions of Black writers from across the country, across genres, across experiences, and across the African diaspora. Black Writers Read is a behind the scenes conversation into the craft and what it means to create as a Black author in today's society. I just realized my washing machine is going. Hopefully, y'all don't hear that. Since starting the series during the summer of 2020, we've hosted 50 authors representing various genres, including children's books, young adult fiction, poetry, urban creative nonfiction, memoir, history, horror, essays, food, and culture from around the globe, including Western Massachusetts, Maryland, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Florida, upstate New York, New York's Hudson Valley, Vermont, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Chicago, Virginia, Portugal, Costa Rica, and St. Martin. Today, we add Philadelphia to this list, welcoming Dr. Raina J. León to Black Writers Read. Dr. Raina J. León is Black, Afro-Boricua, and from Philadelphia, Lenni Lenape ancestral lands. She is a mother, daughter, sister, madrina, comadre, partner, poet, writer, artist, digital archivist, podcaster, and teacher educator. She believes in collective action and community work. She is the author of Black God Mother This Body, Canticles of Idols, Boogeyman Dawn, Sombra, Dislocate, and the chapbooks Profeta Without Refuge and Areyto to Atabey, Essays on the Mothering Self. She is a founding editor of the Acentos Review, an online quarterly international journal devoted to the promotion and publication of Latinx arts, which celebrates its quince in 2023. Oh, that's cute. And in that time has published nearly 1,000 Latinx Latine voices. She teaches at Stonecoast MFA at the University of Southern Maine and co-hosts the podcast Generational Archives with Dr. Norma D. Thomas. To learn more about Raina and to purchase copies of her book, which is willing to autograph if you purchase from her site, please visit her website at rainaleon.com. That is RAINALEON.com. Raina believes in collective action and community work, the profound power of holding space for the telling of our stories, and the liberatory practice of humanizing education. As an educator of our present and future agitators, Dr. León is a full professor, for those who are in academia, I'll say that again, full professor of education at St. Mary's College of California, only the third Black person, I think it's all Black women so far, and the first Afro-Latina to achieve this rank at the institution. She supports poets and writers at the Stonecoast MFA at the University of Southern Maine, in addition to her work as a digital archivist. Dr. León is an emerging visual artist, writing coach, and curriculum developer. She co-hosts the podcast Generational Archives with Dr. Norma Thomas. In this podcast, Doctors Thomas and León present a show where they connect, heal, uncover through intergenerational conversations and archival research. A mother-daughter team, they have been collaborating on writing, facilitation, education projects, and research for, well, all of Raina's life. I love that. This podcast explores the closeness of the relationship and how they are together practicing attunement with their ancestors through the ancestral recovery work. They are pushing to learn the forgotten and erased names, and will teach you how to do that too. I really want to do that because I recently did my ancestry DNA and my family tree, and I was only able to go back so far thanks to slavery. So I hope to connect with her on that. Raina and I connected several months back, having about having her on Black Writers Read. So it is finally and just amazing an honor for us to conclude Women's History Month with her today. For those of you who are new to Black Writers Read, here's the format of our show. Raina will read an excerpt from her work. We will then chat about her book and her books and her work as an author. If time remains at the end of the conversation, we'll open it up to question and answer for those who are joining us today. We typically have viewers joining us from both Facebook and YouTube. If you have a question, please feel free to include it in the comment section on the platform where you're joining us from today. I will compile the questions and either pose them to our guests following our conversation or insert them during an appropriate time. I'd now like to bring Dr. Raina J. León to the virtual stage.
Yes! I come with my own applause.
Yes, cue the wind machine and the crowd and the twerking.
Well, and only one update to my bio, which is this. I am now retired. I retired early, y'all.
What?
Freedom! I retired early, and I'm now under consideration or being uplifted for emeritus status. So for those in academia that know what that's significant. So if that happens and raise up those prayers and those candles, then I'll be the first Black person, and I think the first Latina at that university to have achieved that rank, which is highly celebrated within academia. So like, be with me. I hope in a few months where that comes through and it's like, emeritus, excellent, Dr. Raina J. León.
Wow.
But I'm retired now.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I hope, and I hope nobody hears the wash machine in the background. I'm about to cite hip hop. Thank you, 50th anniversary. I hope I'm not breaking any copyright laws. Hold up. Wait a minute. You need to teach us the ways of you. You're retired. Wow.
Yeah. There's an opportunity, and I took it with the idea that I can still teach. I'm dedicated. I have a vocation in creative practice across many different art forms, primarily as a writer and as an educator, as a teacher educator specifically. I can do that and still be like expansive and throw myself into creative practice. And that's what I'm doing. I'm writing a werewolf romance right now for fun, right? So
what?
Yeah.
Yes.
The spicy bits, and they are spicy and they're lovely.
And we're gonna have you on when you finish that book.
I would love that. I will read the spicy bits.
We are here for the spicy bits. We are here for the spicy. Man, girl, it better be super, super spicy. I don't censor my people. So yes. Please find the sauciest, juiciest like parts of it and be ready to read it off here.
Oh yes. And Nicole, like I am, because it's me and because I'm so rooted in Black feminist thinking and thinkers and womanist inspirations and so on. Like, so my werewolves are not really that concerned with alpha. It's like they're dismantling that. It's matriarchal. Like there are circles of women who are supporting one another. There's queer romance in there. Like I am like diving in and it's like disrupting some things. So I'm really excited about the project.
Yes. And for those who will be listening to this on the audio podcast, you're not seeing all of the dancing and stuff that we were doing. So hopefully you can imagine that through like just the excitement in our voices.
Yes. Well, and my excitement for anyone who ever works with me is always like whatever the scale is, let's say 1 to 10, my excitement, my energy in being in connection with people is always like 57,000.
Yes! 57, 11,000. Right. Yes.
All the Black numbers, the 57 and the 11.
Yes! See, this is why we were meant to meet. Because a lot of people think I am like a lot. And I'm like, because I'm always on 5711 million thousand. So now I met a
Yes.
member of my cohort. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, we are part of the cosmic community. We're traveling through space with all sorts of galaxies.
Yes. And on that note, Dr.
Yes.
León, are you ready to read?
I am. I was going to read you, our collective who are listening, a few poems from Black Godmother's Body, as well as Boogeyman Dawn, which was my second book, and a new poem.
Yes. So take it away.
Yeah. So The Only Color. The only thing that you need to know about this poem is that for my son and my daughter, who you may hear in the background, they both have these interesting things about color. When they were first learning color, every color was one color. So for my son, it was verde. So if you pointed to an orange thing and asked him what color is that, he would say verde. If you would look at a blue thing, he would say verde. My daughter, the same thing. You look at a black thing, say, what color is that? Everything is blue. That said, if you ask them to point to the yellow one, right, or the red one, they always point to the correct thing. They know the colors, but for some reason saying it, they put everything into one category. So this poem is called The Only Color. Verde, verde, verde. Every color is verde. And I think on Federico Garcia Lorca, how I read this poem to him days old, his whole body less than 6 pounds on my chest. And now he stands, a wild octopus boy, on a chair reaching for the markers. Verde, verde, he says, though the uncapped tool marks page to orange. And his father says, he knows what the best color is. I say naranja or anaranjado. He has to know his colors and go into a diatribe about school, not being behind. It is not about school. He is my son, and so the box waits. A check mark of abuses woven into his identity. Will he ever be able to just be the creative child who says verde, verde, verde for every color? Glorified for how his mind stretches divergent. My husband does not know that the box can be a casket, and each day we must fight for it not to be. Ahmad ran on a street lined with green leaves. Lorca wrote a poem. They shot him too. So bright, I just want my son to know his colors and live. So that first poem, followed by this one called The Pistol's Confession. And it's after Ross Gay and Quresh Ali Lanzana. And I am going to sing a little bit of this song, which is called Didn't Leave Nobody But the Baby by Emmylou Harris. And the reason I'm going to sing it as a precursor, as an epigraph for the poem, is that I've done that for a long time because I was preparing for a reading of The Pistol's Confession many, many years ago. And for some reason, this song kept needling its way into my mind, and essentially through its push was saying, I belong in this poem. And so ever since, I've sung a little bit of that song. So The Pistol's Confession is in the voice of the gun, and in consideration of all the school shootings that continue to have, it's poignant when we think about the pistol also having a voice. It was written in 2006 after the killing of 5 little girls at an Amish school. And I remember after that school shooting saying to myself, if this can happen with the Amish, they have horses and buggies. The most committed to a spiritual life and engaged in innocence and devotion among us. And still their children are taken this way. If nothing happens now, it never will. And here we are with shooting after shooting. The Pistol's Confession. Go to sleepy little babe. Go to sleepy little babe. Come lay bones on the alabaster stones and be my ever-loving babe. Go to sleepy little babe. Go to sleepy little babe. You and me and the devil make three. Don't need no ever loving babe. All I ever wanted was to be held slick in his grip, wetting me down with want. I wanted to be his vessel for his fire, explosive possibility of the spark, the powder that swallows resolution and spits it out and challenge steel. I was born to be a force of reckoning, a force to split and fuse with heat. I was forged to be the forge for smoldering, but never this. I was not shaped for this. His eyes were faulty, but I could see all those pretty little faces, not pinned to straw, but moving and shifting from smile to grimace, moving targets, sure, but not those hitched on a motor and dragged left and right, forward and backward. These cowered beneath desks, hid themselves even within their bones. I just wanted to be held, and there he was holding me to fire, to the ecstasy of killing. All those pretty little faces. With my charred mark, my sizzle and burn, they explode just like straw in bits. I teased, seduced with my circle of steel like a ring of promise, ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Oh, how I sung for him over the whimpers, the bloody throats gurgling their last prayers. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. I was so good, he couldn't help but hold me close, right so he could hear me. I gave him his resolution back. Ashes, ashes. Won't you hold me? Won't you hold me? I just wanted to be held. It's a hard poem, and I wish it wasn't so relevant now. This poem from Boogeyman Dawn is also in the space of loss, and a few years back there were fires. There are increasingly more and more fires in the western part of our country, throughout the world, really. But I was struck by this image of a fire that had pushed through a town also called Paradise, and the warping of the glass of a school bus. What we lose in the fire, a blown tire makes us see. The slight glimmer of wedding dress beating, once licked down by nervous palms before the aisle. The detritus of childhood, her last baby tooth, so recently shook in a pink fairy box. The long unplayed cello that must have sounded out its own urging to the fire that licked it to char. All the books, the blessed books, the devastation of libraries that burn, our tenderest treasures, a mandala prayer written in gold. All the flecks of us, layered in disparate places, the hairballs, crevice resting. We burned there, though we were not there, or perhaps we were. And only high-flying birds could intuit our story as they flew in circles, cinder-blinded until they fell. For the trees are tinder, and the earth grays over. Above, a death mare's mane blocks the sun, searing still in orange glow. How terrible the psychedelic colors at sunset. How terrible the smoldering. And still we did not lose our eyes, seeing the blaze for wonder, what was and what might be. And I think I wanted to just read you this last poem, which is a poem that I'm working on for something new. I don't know what the something new is. My father calls my children crazy for running, for shouting with glee as they run from him. Get that boy, Pop, get that boy. And though it is sweet, and we all laugh, a part of me shivers at how his mouth learned to fix this sentence. How many times as a child did he hear, get that boy, or shout it? How many times did he flash and slice a blade just to get a blood spray to run the opposite of red, shooting in the dark? It's crazy what I know and don't about his beginning. And now my children are crazy in laughter. Joy is crazy. Running is crazy. Someday, some point in the future, who will be still first? and whoever it is, won't that be crazy too? And those are the poems. Those are the poems I wanted to read today.
Thank you so much, Raina. Like I love your work so much because it lives not only so beautifully on the page, but also hearing it recited as
Thank
well.
you.
So the first question that I have for you is, when did you discover that you were a writer? And then when did your literary voice emerge?
So I have been writing since I was a little one. My mom is a poet. So she bought me my first book of poetry. I still have it somewhere lost in the hoarding nature of my home. Um, and I originally was, when I was journaling, even as young as 8, I was journaling about my life, making sense of it. I was also writing short stories, which I would ask my mom to read, and she would read, and she would say, "This is lovely, Raina, but why are they so sad?" And it's, Mommy, I'm sad. So like, this is why
Aw.
my stories are so sad. But they helped that writing. I'm not sure if I can claim that I always wanted to be a writer, but I always wanted to write. I knew the necessity of that. And I don't think I really discovered more of my voice until much later. More like college, or really dedicating time and thought, my sleeping hours gone for writing, and reading differently. You know what? I think a moment of shift might have been when I went to Cave Canem for the first time in 2003, and the story of me getting there is epic. It's beautiful. Perhaps we'll have time another time. But me getting there and being surrounded by incredible, like talented as whatever, like just brilliant Black writers, and they would like drop all this knowledge of like, oh, you reading that Yusuf Kuminyaka, and Yusuf Kuminyaka was there, right? Like I was learning from him at Cave Canem, but I was like, I should have done my research. I don't know. I didn't read it. So I was 22. There's so many things I didn't know. And so I'm surrounded by people, and they're dropping names. And then I started reading and seeing myself in conversation with a larger community of Black writers in particular. And then that extended to a lot of other writers of color. And so, yeah, I think my voice emerged as my reading eye emerged in that time.
Nice. You are a very prolific writer. Having written several books, if you go to her website, you'll see like a list of them. I think I can count 5 right now, with some of them being chapbooks, some of them being full poetry collections. And also, you write in multiple genres. How has your writing evolved since writing your first book,
Yeah.
Canticle of Idols, which was published in 2008?
Yeah, it's so much has changed and so much is the same. So when I look back to Baby Raina, I'm like, every now and then I look at the Baby Raina poems from Canticle of Idols. I'm like, okay, Baby Raina, you had something going there. You had something going. And there's definitely some explorations of identity and spirit and family and ancestry, and the wisdom that we can learn from spirit, however that manifests into religious paths and so on. And even looking at my younger writing, my earlier writing, I am very thoughtful around ancestral stories, which is so core to a lot of my work now. And I these days, the algorithms tell me that I should look some more into ADHD things. You watch the one video, and then a whole bunch of other videos come up.
Yep.
Oh, well, I do that. I do that. I do that. So even as a child, I had to do 5 things at the same time to get one thing done. So I had to be knitting. I had to be reading a book. I had to be like opening an orange. I had to be like tapping my foot to like look at the math lesson and be able to understand it. Like has always been my thing. And so this idea of being able to do a lot of things at once has just been core to who I am. So much so that I remember when I got my job at St. Mary's, the dean at the time was like, "Didn't anybody ever tell you you were supposed to specialize?" And I was like, "Yeah, they told me, but like, don't you want me to be good at everything? I'm excellent."
Yes.
So I'm excellent in all these different ways. And I like the play of that, right? Even when I'm not excellent and I'm an emerging visual artist and I just want to sketch things and be bad and just be like not worry about what it is to be bad, what it is to be good. That comes through in my art form too. The Black Godmother's Body has these visual poems which started as sketches, as collages, digital collages with ancestral like documents, birth certificates, death certificates, that layered on with images, layered on with writing, layered on, and now they're the cueing images for augmented reality, which I change every 3 months. And it's like this one note in the book that if you miss it from the front matter, you miss that the book continues to be interactive. It changes every 3 months. And so if you got an app, the app is called Halo AR, and you use that app to look at some of the images, you get new content every 3 months. So yeah, as long as I can keep it up, we'll see.
Sorry, I
love that you're like blown away. Thank you, because sometimes people are like, Raina, because scattered and experimenting and play is wonderful when it is rooted in the book. But, sometimes you also have to do things like, I don't know, fold laundry. I hate folding laundry.
Yes.
And like putting the checks that come in the mail into where they belong so that you can get paid. It takes me forever to do that. So my mother is actually my creative partner, but she's also the one like, so Raina, that pile of laundry, that's kind of growing.
Yes.
You might want to handle that. Do you need help to handle that? Because you're in creating all these wonderful things over here. So I have people in my life who help.
Yes. Which I hope she doesn't mind that I give her this shout out. My assistant, Candace De Leon, and we go back to our days at Wayne State. She has really helped to keep me organized. Like, you should see our emails and texts back and forth. Like, even just basic stuff like, have you done this today? Have you done that today? Have you checked this? Have you checked that? And I'm like, thank you. Because I'm one of those people that are like like major hyphenates and the like slashes with all the things that I do, because I'm like, I just can't, it's not fair to me in the world to just specialize.
Yes. Like the world of the future. And I really appreciate the guidance from Candace, the form too, of writing through some of our preparation for today, because I think about the future a lot and how with climate change, which is actual permanent change, there are major upheavals that are happening within the world around us that we're not even going to notice for another 5 years and be like, oh my goodness, the frogs are all gone. So all of that. But the future requires that we are all multi-talented. The idea of specialization in a future where there's upheaval within the world, like we need all the skills. So I talk to people about being on apocalypse or zombie apocalypse teams. Like, oh, you do that? Can I be on your team? Like,
wow.
So you know how to do a tourniquet and like do have a handle for like hand radio. I want to be on your team.
But guess what? We're going to be the ones to survive. It's going to be
the
roaches and us.
Right. My mom discovered, she was doing for the podcast Generational Archives. She was talking about how you start with yourself, right? And doing ancestral research and genealogical research. And she's like, and looking at my documents, I had totally forgotten that because of the 50s, because of the Cold War and everything, I suppose it was just part of the norm that kids did civil defense training. So apparently I got a certificate in 8 hours of civil defense training. Can't remember what they talked about, but I guess I know something. And
Wow.
I was like, that's why the elders got to be on the team too, because people take elders for granted as like, oh, things are going to be slower, whatever. Nah, like they got all the stories. They know how to operate things that we don't know how to operate anymore. We're so dependent on the socials and the technology and this and the other. They're like, can you make butter? I know how to make butter. Like,
Yes, they churning butter on the
right. Can
back
you make
porch.
ice cream? I know how to make ice cream. Where's that rock salt? Like,
And also you go to their, because like my grandparents, they were Great Depression babies. You'll
yes,
go and like find tons of money hidden between like
yes,
mattresses.
yes, yes. You want to stretch that toothpaste because you can't get any from the corner store anymore? Elder will tell you.
Yes. So just speaking of your brilliance and like your multi-genre-ness, my next question. An audio reinvention of poems from Canticle of Idols are available on your website. And a lot of these questions are from my assistant Candace. She's
Oh,
brilliant.
good.
Can you describe your experience working on this project? And then can you share the experience of putting this project together?
Yeah. So I had the opportunity, my first book, I talked to people a lot. I learned a lot from that first book about contracts, about support that I could expect. And it taught me a great deal of how to do PR and marketing and promotion for my work in the future. So I learned a lot from that first book, which I teach now when in classes like Speakeasy Project and so on. But I had this opportunity to think about buying my work back. And so I bought my books rights back from the publisher. Yeah. And then I was like, I want to reimagine this. I want to do this differently. And I want to pull a few of these pieces out and think about an album. I'd worked with a production genius, sound engineer genius, Cynthia Pimentel, as part of a project with the Poetry Foundation. So there's the Versus podcast, and then there was a few of us who were invited to do sections where we worked with a producer and were connected with that extended podcast. So I worked at that point with Cynthia Pimentel, who was the sound engineer, producer, and then Jasmine Mendez and Darel Alejandro Holness. And we were talking about Afro-Latinx poetry. Cynthia is E is how they're known, is amazing, just amazing. And throughout that whole process was so genius in the planning and the design and queuing us in and bringing us back in. It was wonderful, wonderful project. So when I was thinking about making this thing and I was actually thinking more like not an album, but more of like a play, like just needing a sound engineer to help make sure it sounded right. And Cynthia was like, nah, let's make this an album. Let's make it trippy. What do you think about experimenting? And really pulled some pieces. I sent the whole book and we began this partnership of working on the book together or pieces of it as part of an album. And so there are 12 tracks and was super excited about the play that they did and the play that I was able to do with the voice and even rewriting some of the poems. So it was wonderful. It was a great experience. And I think because I have done a lot of work since, I didn't have to worry about, oh, my debut book, it's not out in the world anymore. My debut book came out in 2008. This is 15 years later. I got other things that I'm working on, right? I didn't have to have that in the world in the fixed way that it was. It was published, it was great. And now I can rethink it. And I offer that for anybody who's like, I love what I did with that debut book. And now I think I want to play with something different. This is one way to do it.
Wow. See, this is why you're able to retire early. Like, I published my first book in 2008. I'm like, this is why she's able to retire early. You got like, and I hope I'm framing this like appropriately, but it's like you learned how to be within systems and institutions, and now you're able to create your own platforms because of that. And I'm like, MacArthur Genius Grant. I hope y'all are listening.
Oh, see, uplift that. Say it again. Say it again.
MacArthur Genius Grant. I hope y'all are listening because, like, just like the brilliance that you're creating in terms of, again, like taking writing and pulling it off the page. Because this is another reason why I was so excited about having you on today. And I was just like, okay, out of all, and I love that there's so many of us, all of the Black writers related podcasts and shows, like, what makes mine unique? And I'm like, my authors really bend, stretch, muck up conventions and push against the standards of genres. Like, that is so important to me. I'm like, yes, I love the mainstream authors. I hope to have them on someday who follow formulas, but I love people who like step out, like they've mastered the convention, kind of like jazz. Like, you master the convention, you step out of it, and you're able to really create your own. So, yeah.
Well, and even as you're thinking about that, I'm thinking about that first poem that I read, The Only Color. Now, the reason of the line, the box can be a casket, is very different, but the box can be a casket, right? So,
yes,
let's break the box and recognize that people want to put you in a casket. They want to put you in a box. They want to name you for their own purposes, make you a cog in their wheel and their machine. But like, how about we not deal with the machines anymore? How about we like actually recognize our humanity, and as funky and messy and as like colorful as that is, and that we're a part of a wildly colorful world, that humanity ain't the only like business on the block, like that.
Yes,
that we are also natural beings, and the natural world has so much to show us too. So the it's about adaptation. It's about innovation, even within our living. And so, of course, we should do that within our art, because art should be in relationship to living. It should be in alignment and attunement with the spark of creation. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. That's an interesting segue into my next question. Speaking of life, a part of life, and I love that there's many things out now that is making space for the after and grieving, because it is a very important part of life that I feel like many people don't want to acknowledge. But I'm glad that we have the space, but I also think we come from ancestral cultures that have, that like our past is important. So many of your poems are in the space of grief, particularly as a mother and educator. Mourning can also be a call to shake loose of the hold of violence because of a fear of or the reality of loss of what is so precious in a child's wonder and our joy in witnessing it. It's out there. So, like, I didn't write. So my assistant got this from somewhere around your work. So I love that she crafted this question. This can be a lot to hold, both as space for yourself as an author, the stories you write, and also for your readers. I am specifically interested in your process of caring for yourself when writing such work. How do you ensure that you've made space for self-care and self-check when writing about grief?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I am working on self-care all the time. I've learned a lot of things along the way. Therapy is beautiful. That is self-care. That is self-love. And it's also love for your whole community. Because when you are healed and when you are feeling centered, everybody else is going to flow well. So I believe in that. I participate in therapy. That is also part of my self-love practice. I also enjoy all the essential oils. Rituals for my writing, rituals for my creation, rituals to just ground me in a space. Even when I'm traveling, I travel with essential oils because that helps me to feel surrounded by like safety and love and peace. I use the Liberate app a lot, which is an app for folks of color, created by us for us. And I love the meditations there, especially the ones on ancestors are like, that's my jam right now. And there's some emerging ones around body movement, and I'm really interested in those too. And for self-care too, my husband is such a great support in my life and in the lives of our family. And so he often, like, I take a nap almost every day. And my husband will be like, I think you need to take a nap right now.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to take these babies. You go take a nap.
Yes.
Like 45 minutes. And sometimes you go up the stairs and all of a sudden you can be on the socials. At least for myself, I get drawn into the TikTok world.
The TikTok.
The TikTok world. But what I say to myself, even in that, is like, oh, I was given this time to decompress. And if I rest, if I sleep and close my eyes for even 15 minutes, that is enough. If I want to use this time to just be in the worlds of other people, that's fine too. It is still checking me, allowing me to check out from the other things that are weighted within my day. And because if I don't tell myself that, it'll be like, oh, you had this 45 minutes or hour, you could have gotten the rest, a full like rest, and woke up refreshed and bounced and danced down the stairs or whatever. 15 minutes is a good nap. And so I give myself like those moments of affirmation and encouragement and seeing. So, and I draw, I paint, I write, I push my husband, who would rather, he's a homebody, to be like, no, we're going to the beach. Like, so those kind of things where we're in the space of delight with one another. And every now and then I eat some sweet things.
We're in the space of delight with one another. Oh my gosh, can you get that trademarked?
T-shirt. Next
yes.
We're gonna have merch.
Yes. Merch in March. I love it. Oh my God. Yes, yeah, because I'm like my husband is now who is white. He's learning now that rest is essential and it's so important. And I'm just like, yo, you're not a constant machine. You need that moment to like you need to recalibrate. I'm like, we recalibrate our phones. They do updates all the time. Why is technology able to update?
Ooh.
But like humans aren't able to update. Like,
that is so wise. That is so wise. Like, if technology can update, so can we. Like, invest in your evolution. Invest in your
yes. Yeah, and I love how too, speaking of technology, like my phone right now is on like 15%. It's gonna die soon. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna just die. I'm not like, yeah, I'm gonna die until you recharge me. So it's just like, again, going back to, like the apocalypse and all of that. And like once, and like going back into the humanity, what gets to me, and this is like just an aside, like, why is it that everything else, like even the seasons, like right now I'm looking out my window and like trees don't have leaves on them. Yeah. Bears and shit get to go hibernate. Like everything else gets to sleep. Everything else gets to recharge and recalibrate. So it's just like, humans, why is that even our pets? Like, I would love to be a cat. One of our cats, Lucy, who is like one, I think she's one. I can't remember how old she is. But homegirl, like zip, 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 zip. Like, and then all of a sudden she just crashes and sleeps for like 6 or 7 hours. And then zips, 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 zips. And I'm like, in order for her to zip like that, she needs to sleep. So I'm like, humans, why can't, why can't we be of that?
I want to offer you this, which is a wisdom from Alexis Pauline Gumbs.
Yes.
And then also wisdom from Ebony Noel Golden. And following them, if you email them and they are immersed in a creative activity or just focusing on their own rest, their away messages are beautiful. And so here is my away message from the fall. Dear scholar, teacher, colleague, kin, community member, artist, dreamer, I love you. Thank you so much for reaching out to me as the autumn leaves fall. They offer the joy of the crackle to our steps over all and any distance. I too am letting fall as I prepare for winter dreaming, spring budding, and summer blossoms. Winter is coming. And in this case, it will bring so much life and shared renewal. My new book, Black Godmother This Body, just came out a few months ago, and so much is alive and happening. If you want to know where I will be, check out the website. If you want to build with me around mothering and healing and archive generational stories and augmented realities, arts practice, or teaching, I am open, and will respond to all emails within 72 hours. If you don't get a response in that time, beloved one, try me again. As with fall, there are many, many, many emails, leaves these days. And as with winter, when that snow offers its blanket, all that was becomes hidden. That's my email box. I am generally faster than this limit, but if not, I hope you wish me well in my breathing as I witness you in your own vibrant life. We will connect when the time is right. Believe that. That's my away message from the fall.
Wow.
I decided to give myself a few weeks of rest. I wasn't going to rush to anything. And I trusted that whatever the opportunity was that was going to come, it would meet me at the time when I was checking the email, but I wasn't going to check the email constantly. I needed some time to just play with my kids, watch some movies, and dream with my partner by myself. And I also still wanted people to know how much I love them, how much I care. Obviously, you have my email for a reason. I don't give my stuff to everybody, but that I wasn't going to be the cog in the machine, and neither should any of us.
Yes. So everyone that's watching, I've had my mouth open a lot. Like there have been flies flying in and out, just and y'all gotten a tour of my mouth, just mouth dropping, just the sheer brilliance that you are sharing today.
I'm happy to be here and happy to be so alive and joyful with you.
I love it. Oh my gosh. And sometimes I love that we're also just taking these spaces to just talk about everything, because that's the other thing too. It's like we're not just of a singular identity. Yeah. Like we exist as a whole. And so and I feel like to be able to get to the genres that we're working in, we have to be of the whole and understand of the whole, and also understand of our authentic selves. So thank you for being present with me today.
Yeah, of course. This is the human being behind the art, right? And the art is changing, and I think that's reflective of the human being that's changing too. So
yes. So speaking of humans, I'd now like to talk about subjectivity within your work. Yeah. Several of your poems in Profeta Without Refuge and Boogeyman Dawn are written in first person. Who is your typical protagonist, and why is it important to center an experience from that perspective?
Yeah. So within any poem, the poet will say, well, the speaker is not the poet, right? And sometimes that's true. The speaker is not the poet. The poet is, the speaker is a combination of the poet's experiences, what has been heard, what's been imagined, all these things. Sometimes the speaker is just me. Like sometimes, but you never know from poem to poem, right? And sometimes the poem will guide you in saying, oh no, the poet is taking on the voice, the imagined voice of a particular speaker, right? It's taking on the voice of the Joker, is taking on the voice of the gun, and trying to stretch out a little bit within that being, that consciousness, and try and explore what that must be like to think that way. I think that is also interesting in connection with me as writer, because I'm always trying to figure out why would you think that way? Like, why would you do this way? And always trying to see all the perspectives within a conflict. And then understanding all the perspectives doesn't mean I agree with you. I understand where you came from. And now we have to make a different choice. So, but it serves me well when I can say I understand. Like, I can see your logic and how you got here, and here's my logic and how we got here, and now we have to make a choice together based on understanding our different logics. And I'm going to push you to make sure that you understand mine. in the way that I understand yours. And so the Profeta without refuge, Boogeyman Dawn, a lot of my work that uses that I is locating within the capital I, and again is important to locate with like that person, that perspective matters. That said, Black God Mother This Body uses the I too a lot, but it's a lowercase I. And the reason behind that, the whole book is lowercase. But there's a reason behind the lowercase I, and the lowercase I for me is a collective I, that all people, I hope, can find some rootedness within the I, a connection point, and yet it is still distinct. It is still has its not has not lost its power to the collective. Rather, is drawing people in to an individual experience and trying to flesh that out, trying to make that sensory and real for whoever comes to encounter it. I've gone into literary theory land.
Yes.
But a capital and a lowercase for a poet, it means everything.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Dr. León. Yes. And I also want to bring attention to the sheer brilliance of your writing, as I believe many of your poems feature poems within poems, like Left Behind from Boogeyman Dawn. I love that one for so many reasons. And Poet Code's Story from Profeta Without Refuge. I was able to take, so there's italicized words in each of those poems. Yeah. I was able to take those italicized words and read a whole nother poem in completely different contexts. So can you talk about making this specific style choice where you choose specific words to italicize? Do they have their own voice? And then I'd love to hear from you about your process in general, about selecting how the words would look on the page, as there's some unique patterns and layouts in how your work reads in print.
Yeah, so I play a lot with how the poem uses the page as a score. That idea of the page as a musical score actually came from me learning from a poet and visual artist, Cedar Saigo. And it was super instructive for me to think about the page as instructive for the reader to breathe as you want a breath to be uttered, to guide the reader through. My work also has a lot of voices within it. So I really appreciate the attentiveness to those italics, to the different poems. And oftentimes there are definitely multiple poems happening at the same time. Because I suppose because that's how I operate in the world too, is that I hear all these different perspectives within the same situation, within the same topic and theme. And for Poet Code's Story, that poem definitely, it has a consistent voice all the way through. With my book called Sombra Dislocate, which is my third book, it even has italics along the side of several pages of the marginalia. And so when you look at the poems, you have the poem itself. But then if you go back to all the pages and just read the marginalia, that's another voice. That is the ethereal. That is the voice of like spirit and ancestor calling in and giving counsel and challenging. And so the voice exists in the marginalia and it exists on the side. And so this thoughtfulness of like, how can the italics hold the cosmic, can hold the other reality that is still part of reality, whether that is spirit, whether that is, as folks would see on the cartoons, like the devil and the angel on your shoulder, right?
Yes.
They're saying, right? And so it's the devil and the angel. It's all your ancestors. It's your spirits. It's the people who guided you, who formed you, with whom you're in constant conversation of like, what path should I take? So that's where all these different voices come through.
Nice. I love that you mentioned the devil and the angel. I think I have like petty 1 and petty 2 always on my shoulders. They're like, I need you to do this. And next I'll be like, I don't know. And then petty 2 is like, girl, if you don't. So it's like they tag team. It's like, I'm going to need you to do. No, it's never no, you shouldn't do. And then the other one's go, go, go. No, both on my shoulder. Like, girl, if you don't do this.
That's great. That is great. For me, I oftentimes like have the exploration of multiple ideas, but what is really orienting to me is the dream space, and that comes through in the Black Godmother's Body, my latest book, a lot. But if I have a bad dream, especially when I wake up talking to myself and orienting myself, like my husband once came home and he's like, "So what happened? There's sage everywhere."
Yes.
And I got salt going across all these doorways. Like, what did you dream? Who did you talk to? What's going on? And I had went into this whole thing about this dream I had. And he was like, okay, all right. Do you like?
Yes, I love you mentioned the salt. I'm just seeing you throwing it behind your shoulders, like, who back there?
We all gotta be protected.
Yes. Yes. So, as a Black Afro-Boricua woman who is a mother, daughter, sister, madrina, comadre, partner, poet, writer, and teacher educator who creates, curates, and manifests in multiple modalities, including publishing, education, podcasting, scholarly writing, and visual arts. Why is it vital for a voice like yours to make space within these institutions? And then, what is the mission of your work through these various media?
So I am not myself alone. I come with people. And so the importance of me writing within these spaces is also holding space for others to imagine themselves here, to disrupt, to push into, with the Acentos review, as well as within any space that I'm in. I'm always like, my door is always open. And I'm always the person who's like, oh, what's your dream? Like, let's dream together. Did you know that you could go to this thing? I saw it. It's not for me, it's for you. So I'm always a person who, if someone tells me what their dream is, I'm still looking. And years later, I'll be like, oh, I remember this thing that you said 5 years ago, and this thing I just saw is right for you. So I'll email people out of the blue. Because I think that that my work is not just to express my voice, which is, again, I don't come by myself. I'm with a whole group of people who informed who I am, and that is culturally rich, enriched. It is spiritually enriched. It's regionally enriched. I'm in deep relationship with my ancestors and community. And that said, I'm also in the space of, you know, trying to support the dreams of others, because then flourishing happens. When we're not trying to be gatekeepers, but we're trying to be portal openers, conduits for creative practice and freedom. That's what I'm really interested in, because I I think about the maroon space sometimes, like the spaces that enslaved Africans would create, that were against, far from the eyes and influence of those who had kept them away from the truth of their freedom. And I want to be a part of creating those kind of spaces, and extending that from the space of fugitivity to welcome. And so that's why within my bio too, I'm so rooted in saying who with whom I am in relationship. Um, who am I in relationship to? Um, because again, like, we should be conduits, not gatekeepers. The mission of my work, across all these different things, has to be, again, about being human and whole, and creating space for other people to be human and whole, and whatever that means for them. And whether that is like, okay, today your humanity is saying that, or rather, reparations says that you should get your own day. You're calling it reparations day, and as a person of color, you're the only Black person in your office or whatever, and you're like, the ability to be able to say, I'm going to take my reparations day today, and so I'm going to take a rest. I'm going to take a nap all day, and all y'all people, I want you to read this book. And it happened. Like, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
Oh,
Reparations days, I love it. Right. So let's dream into stuff like that, where we can actually support one another in repose and flourishing and recognizing too of the toxic shit of the past, and recover our history. Because I appreciate too that when you started the introduction of like, oh, I just did the ancestry and I'm blocked by this, like that's also reparations. Help me do the research. Help me find my people that you took from me. Help me find my language. Help me to be able to have all of this access to what was taken from me. That's reparations too. I hope I answered the question.
Oh
like,
yeah, yes. Yes. Which I really hope to, quick aside, I mentioned this before, it's like, especially given my ancestry, it's too important for me to figure out who my people are before 1833. I am 94% of the African continent. Like,
oh yeah.
when I got my DNA back, I was like, wait a minute. I was expecting it to be, and I've mentioned this on past episodes as asides, I was expecting, given that I'm African American and I've had so many generations here, I was expecting like, 20% white ancestry because a slave master raped my people.
Right.
I was like 94%. I was like, somewhere in like, and then my white ancestry is from, at least from what I was able to trace, and it's only like 4%, is like from people who immigrated here. So I'm like, there's power in that.
There's so much in that.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like I got to the, like on my mom's side of the family, and I don't know why, everything stops at my great grandmother, who I knew she was alive when I was a child. My every father's family, everything stops at like the fourth great grandparent, because that's like, pre-Civil War. And then you start looking at the census and you start seeing people like marked as domestic workers, like in like 1850 something. And then before that, enslaved. And I'm just like, yo. So it's like, I owe it to my own reparations.
Yes.
Yes. To find out like who these people are, because I'm somebody too, like community. I'm like, I have the Sankofa bird tattooed on my arm. Like my past is just so important to me in my community. I'm like, I do not, like, I coexist. I don't exist alone. So yeah. And so, and my work is very community centric as well, which takes me to the next question that I have. Given that community is so present in your work, and you talked a little bit about this, but I would love to know, what is the exchange of ideas and knowledge along with the types of partnerships that are established through the relationships that you co-create and coexist within community?
Yeah. So community is everything to me. I think about my grandmother. I was just doing an interview with my aunt, my father's sister, and she was sharing with me a lot of the family history from Puerto Rico all the way through New York, and then here through Philadelphia and everything. And I was thinking about how I grew up surrounded by my 30-some first cousins, right? And and just on my dad's side, and was very, very close with them because my grandmother helped to raise us all, took care of us when our parents were working and so on. And how that had such a shaping influence at that experience. But also my mom was from a really small town in Western Pennsylvania. And anytime we had a break, we would go back to Uniontown to see my family. And they're like deeply rooted. I mentioned my family has been there for over 200 years. So like massively everywhere in this really, really small town. Now it's like less than 12,000 people. But surrounded ever by my family, surrounded too by family who were no longer living. Like, how many people go to their family graveyard once a year, like, and participate in barbecues and like visit the family graveyard and like, oh, this is where your great grand is here and over here and like all that. walking the graveyard from my mom's side. And so that extends that connection of community and family to everything that I do. So Kabekana, like big ups to the community there, like those strong, nurturing relationships. And I've been very fortunate in that, like, and also conscientious in choosing to engage in creative communities like Macondo, like Cantomundo, like Bona, which are all organizations that have supported folks of color in their writing craft, and so creating another family, and again, sharing dreams, sharing opportunities, sharing resources, just also sharing the gripes that come with being an artist within these spaces, and like, oh, I don't understand, and this thing is pushing me out, and then creating new spaces, right? Which is how the Acentos Review started, was because there just weren't that many publications that would publish Latinx writers, artists, especially if you had even one syllable, one word of Spanish in it. It like just would not publish. And I experienced that over and over and over again. And I was like, yo, we need our own thing. And so that's how the Acentos Review started in 2008. But that coming through, like all of the ideas, all of the knowledge, I truly believe that maybe there is a table, and it's not enough to have the space for a seat at the table. Everyone should be able to eat what will give them nourishment, and it's not going to be the same thing. So we have to have conversations around what will actually feed us and feed us well, and we have to be able to celebrate one another in that, like, feasting together. And it's going to be messy and lovely, and I imagine that table is boisterous and you can't hear down the way, but like that's kind of the image of community and craft and care wherever I am, as a creative, as a educator. Like there is an ever expansive table. It has no limits. There's no need to argue over the seat. The seat is just for you. The food is just for you, because we care about you and we're listening. So that's the community that I want to be a part of, and that's what I'm always reaching for.
Nice. You also work as a digital archivist. Can
Yeah.
you describe your work as a digital archivist and share why it's important to digitize work?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm doing now is in partnership with my mom, Dr. Norma Thomas, and we have this podcast, Generational Archives. And my mom is the genealogist, or one of the genealogists, I should say, family historians for my family. So the story of like the founding of my family in this space in Western Pennsylvania is that Washington was involved. George Washington, one of my families had family members was engaged in wartime service, got a whole bunch of land. When Pennsylvania said we're not going to do that whole slavery thing anymore, George Washington got mad and he sold a whole bunch of stuff. He sold a lot of property. And my family, the story is, either was granted or bought a whole lot from him. And they were a family of mixed people, so white and free Black people, possibly some folks who were enslaved Africans. And when they had the opportunity to get out, they got out of Dodge, out of Virginia, and moved to this space. And so my mom has a lot of these records that some are digital and some are not. So family recordings, transcripts, and trying to make them available, not only through the podcast, but also available through the creation of a family archive. Also, my mom helped to found a 501c13, I think that's what it is, for the cemetery where all of many of my people are buried. And so creating an online list of the people who are buried there, so that generations to come can, as long as the interwebs exist, can find their people, right, in a way that's accessible. So like the work with my mom of going to family records, because it's not just family, are that region in Fayette County, in particular in Western Pennsylvania, when you see any history of that space, it's like Black people don't exist. But we've been there. We've been there for 200 plus years. And a lot of it is connected with my family, but she's not just researching that. There's one pastor, as I remember, who was deeply rooted at the John Wesley Church, AME Zion Church in Uniontown, who was an influence on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so, like, Western Pennsylvania, folks who were embedded in spiritual traditions there had influences all over the world. So trying to cement that and create spaces for that to exist at this point is just in connection with that community. But we're thinking, my mom has a traveling museum that travels throughout that space. And so we're thinking about how to make that more accessible to others who wouldn't be able to travel or go to a place where it's located.
Oh, wow. And as you promised earlier before we got on, your children have made a premiere in the background.
Yes, there's always some excitement at my house. Before we began, I was sharing with you about how my son I've locked the door, but there's a slot and he launched something. I still don't know what the something is down the slot. I had to know something. So I don't know what the thing I had to know.
Oh, no.
So, but the babies are always around, as our ancestors are also always around. And I think that that's the way it should be.
Exactly. Like my stepdaughter made an appearance at some point, and I'm like, and she's rummaging through the food, and I was like, are you a squirrel right now? Like, you have to get the food right now? Okay.
Yes, it was that urgent.
It was that urgent. And it was just constant rummaging. And I'm like, it's taking you that long to choose what you want. You have a palette this big. It should not take you that long to rummage. But it was just like rumble, 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 rumble. And I'm like, I love you dearly, but you have to do that right now. Okay.
It might be like a pillow war or something happening upstairs. So
a pillow war.
Yes, I think it's like some exuberant play, and my son really likes pillow fights. So
Yes. And so my last question for you is, before we wrap up, what is next for you besides going to check out that pillow fight possibly? And how can the Black Writers Read community support you on this journey?
So I mentioned earlier that I'm working on this werewolf romance. So when that comes out, buy it. That'd be cool.
Yes.
Black on Mother's Body came out in August. So for sure, check that out. And I hope that you also enjoy the seasonal changes with the augmented reality. I have mentioned several times about generational archives. So if you yourself are searching for your people and recognize that there might be some generational trauma in there, but also generational resilience. That's one of the things with the podcast too, is like, yes, at least for my people, we definitely have the connections of generational trauma, right? We are descendants of enslaved Africans. And we have generational wisdom and resilience and creativity and delight and joy and sass. And so every episode emphasizes one generational thing that we can see still present within our lives by looking at our ancestors. And so, like, my thinking about generational creativity, one of my great uncles died. He was maybe 25 in the 1947 tuberculosis outbreak throughout the states, but really heavy in Western Pennsylvania. But that creativity is seen in so many parts of my family. And so, yes, there is, again, generational trauma. Let's face that. And this generational spark and creative influence and excitement, that's there too. So yeah, check out Generational Archives, and perhaps hearing some of our stories and methods might lead you to a deeper relationship with your ancestors.
Nice. That's amazing. So, Dr. Raina J. León, thank you so much for being on this
Thanks for having me.
afternoon. Yes, and welcome to the Black Writers Read family. And I look forward to continuing our conversation, because I'm very confident it's not over.
I hope not. I hope not. And if folks comment on the Instagram, I will check that. And if there's any like follow-ups of like, oh, I had this question, I'll answer it. I'll keep following.
Yay.
Oh,
Yay.
and folks can find me on the Instagram too. Raina León, and on the TikTok, I'm Raina J León.
Yeah, the TikTok.
The TikTok. As long as it exists, who knows? Who knows?
Which I'm still trying to figure out how I want to use the TikTok, because like I'm not all about my personal updates, but I feel like I need to be on there, so I'm just like trying to figure out how to like use it.
Oh, I'm so haphazard. I'm so haphazard. It's like, oh, here's my pulling of a tarot card today. What does this mean? Or and then another day it'll be, oh, let me talk about a writing prompt. The two people that I admire on TikTok so much are Dimitri Reyes, who has this wonderful, like really tight introductions to poetry world, gives great prompts, talks about, celebrates books, wonderful. And Jasmine Mendez, who like has this balance between the projects that she's working on as well as like just the incredible person that she is. So
nice. And your dog made a premiere too.
I know, Phoenix. She's a black dog. She was a rescue dog, and Phoenix. So I talk about her coming from the ashes, but just still having the ashes.
Yes. Which I'm surprised my 3 haven't made a premiere. Well, they're on every episode. I'm surprised they're knock on my table. They're not on today, because they typically like it was funny, one Zoom meeting this week, like I couldn't hear and the people who were on the other side couldn't hear. And this is why, because it was a nice day outside and like everybody was walking outside, and our dogs don't think nobody can walk down the street. I'm like, really?
Yeah. They are good warriors for the family, though.
Yes!
No, my little dog is a very small dog. She's a mixed. She's totally mine, and I know what she is because I did the dog DNA. Like, there's a dog DNA test. So.
We've done dog DNA on ours too.
Okay,
yeah,
not just me. But but she's tiny. She's like 25 pounds, but she's got this massive bark. So much so that at our old house, every now and then the post office person would throw over the mail into our yard because they were convinced that she was out in the yard. That's how big her bark was. And so we would come home and find these packages in the yard, even though our dog was in the house.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a good warrior.
But ours, I bet any amount of money, if anyone broke in, they're gonna be like, "Ooh, new friend." Whereas they bark at a leaf blowing outside, they bark at the rain, they bark at a baby being pushed in a straw, all these non-threatening things. And I'm like, how much you willing to bet if somebody, and I hope nobody does, break into our house and they're gonna be like either asleep or, "Ooh, new best friend. We don't feel threatened right now."
Oh, I have no doubt that my dog will remember that she lived on the street for a year and survived. Because I remember one instance where she was at a friend's house, and that friend had a German Shepherd who just kept poking at her. And all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, you're a warrior dog. We got to get you in the car. Like, this might be a fight here. We got to go. I really like this person. Let's go home."
We gonna make the nightly news tonight.
Right.
Get in the car.
Not today. Not today. We're going home.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna be a statistic. Get in the car.
Well, and I think she's the perfect dog for me, because as much as I am now retired in these spaces, but folks sometimes forget that I'm from Philly, and that means something. So
yes.
So I will love you. I'm community and all day, every day, but you push me too far and you'll know that it was too far. So and I have made some folks cry with the genius of my voice and finding the weaknesses very quickly. So my dog and I, we can in some respect. We reflect one another well.
Yes, be like, do not find out the Philly side.
Yes.
Of Raina.
No, find out the Philly side of loyalty. That's the side of Philly that you want to be on with me.
Yes.
That's also very deep. Philly folk, I celebrate that so hard about my city, that when you are whether transplant or you grew up here or whatever, Philly folk are loyal. and absolutely supportive throughout. So that I definitely celebrate about who I am, and it shows in all I do too.
Nice. So, Raina, Dr. León, thank you so much for being on this afternoon. I'm going to do a little bit of wrap up. So, thank you so much for being here today. Cool. So, we will be back on April 8th, National Poetry Month, with poet Enzo Salon Surin to talk about his latest book, American Scapegoat, which is scheduled for release this May. I've been looking forward to having him on for a very long time. In that episode, we're going to be joined by Lisa Pegram, who was on a couple of episodes ago as a special guest co-host. Find me and more about Black Writers Read online at NicoleMYoung.com. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel to keep up with episodes of both Black Writers Read and my other projects. Also, be sure to subscribe to the audio podcast, which is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So thanks to all of you for spending your afternoon with us, and more importantly, for ensuring that Black authors continue to matter. Thank you so much, and see you soon.